They won't tell you it's over. Not on the news. Not on your favorite trading channels. Not even in the paid communities you used to trust. No one sounds the alarm when the lights go out slowly. And that's exactly how it happened. The death of trading didn't come with a bang. It came with a fade, a soft decay, a quiet disappearance of everything that once made the market feel human. You didn't even notice it at first. You thought it was just a slow week, a choppy session, a weird news cycle. But then weeks became months, and your edge, the one you spent years sharpening, stopped cutting through anything. Your setups failed more often. Your entries felt targeted. Your stops got hunted with surgical precision. And still you told yourself, one more tweak, one more test, I'll figure it out. But you weren't falling behind because you were undisciplined, or unskilled, or lazy. You were falling behind because the game itself had changed. This isn't about a bear market, or macro conditions, or liquidity. This is about something deeper, something structural, something few are willing to confront. That the version of retail trading you fell in love with, maybe even built your life around, is gone. This script isn't another trading strategy. It's not here to tell you which indicator to use or what time frame to scalp. It's not a get-rich-quick pitch or even a slow and steady plan. It's a eulogy and a rebirth. Because what died in 2025 wasn't just retail trading. What died was a collective illusion that you could outsmart a system designed to outlast you. That if you just worked hard enough, stayed disciplined enough, or meditated long enough, you'd make it. But in truth, your behavior was never private. It was data. Your edge was never secret. It was modeled. Your setups, replicated, inverted, monetized. This is the story of that shift, told not with numbers, but with honesty. You'll walk through denial, through grief, through the disintegration of identity. You'll meet the machines that front-run your thoughts. You'll confront the dopamine traps that kept you in the game too long. You'll see, perhaps for the first time, how deeply trading shaped your sense of self and what's left now that the system has collapsed. But this isn't the end of you. In fact, this might be the most important trade you've ever made. The trade between illusion and truth. Because if trading was ever about freedom, then the real freedom comes now, not in the charts, but in what you choose to believe when the charts go quiet. Welcome to the silence after the screen fades. Let's begin. Section 1. The silence before the storm. You didn't even notice it at first. The shift. It crept in quietly. No alarms, no breaking news, just a subtle stillness. A flicker in volume. A different kind of silence on the screen. You stared at your charts that morning like you always did. Same setup, same routine. Coffee in hand, heart calm. But something didn't feel right. The candles were moving, but not like before. You felt it in your chest. Something was off. Then you checked the volume. You froze. Where was it? Gone. You blinked, reloaded, switched platforms. Nothing. The liquidity had vanished like a ghost at dawn. You weren't the only one who noticed either. Discord channels were flooding with questions. Is this a data bug? Is my broker down? Why is the order book empty? But deep down, you already knew. This wasn't a glitch. This was the beginning of the end. You remember when trading felt alive, don't you? The thrill of setups, the rhythm of the market breathing in ticks and price waves, the raw honesty of risk. It was never easy, but it was real. You fought for every dollar, studied late into the night, cried over your losses, cheered in silence over your wins. You weren't just trading numbers, you were trading yourself, your discipline, your fear, your patience. But by early 2025, something fundamental had changed. Not all at once, slowly, creeping, like rot behind a painted wall. The algos weren't just faster now, they were smarter, not in the old sense, no longer just speed bots or liquidity hunters. No, this was different. These were language-trained models, behavioral engines, predictive beasts. They didn't need you to make a move. They predicted you before you moved. And that's where it began. Your feeling of being watched. Not in a paranoid way, in a precise way, too precise. Every breakout faded, every dip you bought reversed. The market wasn't just random anymore, it was targeted. You were the target. You weren't trading against other humans, you were being hunted by machines. And you weren't alone. You saw it in the forums. One by one, your peers were giving up. Traders who had been around for years, gone. I can't get an edge anymore. Every setup just evaporates. It's like the market knows me. Because it did. The data was no longer anonymous. Every click, every hesitation, every time you hovered over a trade idea or adjusted your stop loss on your charting platform, it was all tracked, mined, fed into models. You were a dataset. Your psychology was productized. And now the market moved not to reflect value, but to extract your behavior. You weren't trading, you were feeding it. So, here you are, staring at a market that no longer breathes with you, but against you. And what's worse, you miss it. You miss the early mornings where price action told a story. You miss planning your week, drawing your levels, whispering quiet affirmations before a session. You miss the dignity in the craft, the illusion of a fair fight. Now, you open the charts and feel empty. Not confused, not uncertain, just hollow. Because you finally accepted what many couldn't bear to say out loud. Retail trading is dead. At least, the version you knew. But here's the strangest part. You're still here. Still showing up. Still opening charts. Still scanning levels. Why? Because it's not about trading anymore. It never really was. It's about identity. You were a trader. That word meant something. It defined your structure, your mornings, your hopes, your emotional discipline. It shaped your character, gave your ambition a form, even gave your suffering a purpose. And now? You're drifting. And so the question emerges, sharp and unrelenting. What do you do now? Do you fight it, adapt to the machines, or do you walk away? This isn't a technical problem. It's not about finding a new setup. It's a spiritual rupture, a psychological wound. You're grieving. Yes, grieving. You're grieving the death of a way of life. And no one is talking about it. They're still selling the dream, still running ads about how you can beat the system with this new secret method. But deep down, they know. The system is already gone. Replaced, rewritten. It's no longer a market. It's a simulation. And you were coded out of it. Let that sink in. Not with panic, with honesty. Because this is the beginning of clarity. You've reached the edge of the old map. The part where it says, "Here be dragons," the end of known territory. But endings, real endings, hold a gift. They force you to confront what mattered. They strip you bare. And in that stripping, you finally see what was real. all along. Not the trades, not the charts, not the wins, but you. Your process, your thinking, your inner world, the grit, the hope, the fall and the rise. That's what lives. That's what still lives, even here, in the quiet, in the death of trading. Section 2. The lie that kept you hooked. You remember the lie, don't you? Not because someone told it once, but because it was whispered every day. Subtle, constant, like water dripping on stone. The lie was this: you just need to improve your strategy. Every time a trade failed, it echoed. Every time your stop loss got wicked and price reversed without you, there it was again. If I just had a better system, a sharper entry, a more advanced indicator. The lie gave you hope. But it was hope soaked in guilt. Because if the strategy failed, that meant you had failed. So you dug deeper. You bought new courses, changed timeframes, switched platforms, backtested obsessively, tried volume profile, then supply and demand, then Wyckoff, then footprint charts. Then you spiraled into the dark corners of Discord where traders spoke in riddles and sold $997 PDFs like they were gospel. But none of it saved you, because it wasn't the strategy that broke, it was the market itself. You know this now, but you didn't then. You kept grinding, kept waking up early, kept doing everything right, journaling, risk managing, meditating, affirming, and still something was off. The setups didn't behave. The price action was slippery. It looked perfect, but moved like a ghost. You weren't imagining it. You were reacting to a structural shift. But no one told you that. No mentor, no educator, no influencer. Because they didn't know either. Or worse, they did, and they were too busy monetizing your confusion. And you? You kept blaming yourself. Because the lie was seductive. It said, you're in control. It said, if you just work harder, you'll win. But now, in 2025, you see it for what it was, a trap. The truth is brutal, but you're strong enough to hear it now. Here it is. You didn't fail. The game changed. And they didn't tell you. They let you keep bleeding, emotionally, financially, spiritually. You thought you were just almost there. You thought one more tweak would fix it. But deep down, your instincts knew. The market had turned synthetic, engineered, optimized to counter your very psychology. Because here's the ugly secret they won't say on CNBC. Retail liquidity was never loved. It was harvested. And now, in 2025, it's no longer even needed. The machines have enough data, enough volatility, enough volume. You, the human trader, are obsolete. But not because you weren't good enough, because you were never supposed to win. Let that land. Let the anger rise. Let the grief wash through. You deserve to feel it. You gave this everything. Not just your time, you gave pieces of yourself to this. You built a vision around trading, a future, a freedom, a version of life that felt alive. You weren't chasing money, you were chasing meaning, control, identity. And now that it's gone, it hurts. Of course it does. But here's what they can't take. They can't take what trading taught you. The process, the resilience, the way you learn to sit with discomfort, to trust probabilities, to act under pressure, to control your breath, to journal your thoughts, to meet fear with awareness and greed with discipline. That's power, real power, and you still have it. Because it was never about the charts. It was always about your relationship to uncertainty. So now you stand in a new place, beyond the strategies, beyond the gurus, beyond the charts that once promised clarity but now reflect chaos. And from here, you ask a deeper question. What does this experience mean? Not, how do I get back to winning trades? But why did this matter at all? Because maybe, just maybe, trading wasn't the end goal. Maybe it was the training ground, a dojo for your emotional evolution, a mirror for your deepest beliefs, a crucible. And now the fire has gone out. You're left with something more valuable than money, self-awareness. You see it clearly now, don't you? You didn't come here for trades. You came for truth. And that truth hurts, but it heals too. Because in this moment here, at the edge of everything you once knew, you're finally free to choose. No more illusions, no more hope porn, no more lies. Just you and what comes next. And it starts with letting go. Not giving up, letting go. Releasing the fantasy. Section 3. Your edge was never the charts. Here's something you probably weren't told enough. Your edge was never technical. Not really. Not when it mattered. Sure, you studied price action. You mastered candlestick theory. You could recite ATR and R multiples in your sleep. But when you look back, when you really trace the moments that defined your performance, it wasn't the indicators or the entries that made the difference. It was your mindset, your emotional state, your internal clarity. You won trades when you were grounded, when you were still, when your mind was clean. You lost when you were reactive, when fear twisted your logic, when hope clouded your exits. And now that the charts feel rigged, you see it clearly. Your real battleground was never the market. It was you. You remember the good trades, not the ones that made the most money, the ones that felt right, the trades where you didn't chase, didn't hesitate, didn't fidget. You planned it, executed it, took your stop like a professional when it didn't work, took your profit without attachment when it did. Those trades felt effortless. And that's the word, isn't it? Effortless. Like you weren't forcing anything. Like the market and your mind were in sync. You weren't chasing setups. You were responding to opportunity. You weren't trying to be perfect. You were being present. That was your edge. Not some secret Fibonacci level. Not some hidden order block. But you. Calm. Centered. Focused. But then came the noise. The TikToks. The Twitter flexes. The screenshots of million-dollar P&Ls from 20-year-olds with filters and fake Rolexes. The just buy this breakout crowd. The ones who made it look easy, but never showed the drawdowns. And you, being human, compared. You questioned your method. You jumped systems. You overtraded. You doubted your instincts. And every time you tried to catch up to the illusion, you lost a piece of yourself. Until one day, you woke up, and you didn't recognize the trader in the mirror. That's the dark irony of it all. You came to trading seeking freedom. But slowly, trading became a cage. Not because of the market, but because of your expectations. The pressure to win, to prove, to succeed. And now, in the aftermath of 2025, with the illusion shattered and the volume gone, you're forced to face what was buried beneath all along. Who were you trying to impress? And why? It hurts to admit, doesn't it, that part of your trading was performative, not because you weren't committed. You were. God, you were. You gave it everything. You showed up when no one else did. But in the shadows of your dedication was a question you didn't want to answer. Was this about mastery or validation? Were you trying to trade or trying to be seen as a trader? Maybe both. Maybe too much of the second. And that's okay, because we all carry those wounds, the need to prove ourselves, the need to be enough. Trading just exposed it faster. So now, stripped of the fantasy, you stand at a crossroads. The charts don't work like they used to. The edge you once trusted feels dull. The market has evolved, but so have you. And now the real question emerges, not what strategy to use, but what role trading plays in your life now. Because maybe, just maybe, it's not over. Maybe it's transforming, and maybe so are you. There's a strange freedom in this moment. You're not chasing anymore, you're watching, you're listening, you're learning, not about price action, but about yourself. You realize now that every losing trade was feedback, every impulse entry was a mirror, every blown account was a scream from your unconscious. Something's not aligned. And now, finally, you're listening. You're not trying to beat the market. You're trying to meet yourself. Because that's what real traders do, isn't it? They don't just study price, they study who they become under pressure. And in that fire, they find something unbreakable. And so do you, even now, especially now. You've been through the death of a paradigm, and you're still standing. That means something. That means everything. Because when the noise is gone, and the lies are dead, and the charts are still, you remain aware, awake. Section 4. Why you stayed too long. You saw the signs, didn't you? Not all at once, but little by little you felt the ground shifting beneath your feet. The market didn't behave the same way. The candles didn't resolve cleanly. Breakouts faked out more often. Liquidity thinned. You knew something was changing. But you stayed. Why? Because you'd already invested so much. The hours, the weekends, the charts you studied at midnight with dry eyes and a full heart, the books you read, the trades you cried over, the identity you built. You weren't someone who trades, you were a trader, and you weren't ready to give that up. You didn't want to. There's a name for that, you know. Sunk cost bias. The tendency to stick with something simply because of how much you've already poured into it, even when it's stopped serving you. And it hurts to admit that, doesn't it? It makes you feel foolish, weak, like you should have seen it earlier. But stop. Breathe. This isn't about judgment. This is about grace. Because you didn't stay out of ignorance, you stayed out of hope, out of love, out of commitment, out of identity, and that's not weakness. That's human. But here's the thing they don't teach in trading psychology books. It's not just hard to quit a bad trade, it's even harder to quit a dying reality. And by early 2025, the reality you'd built around trading, around your edge, your vision, your process, was dying. Quietly. Without announcement. No thunder, no flash. Just a slow evaporation of opportunity, a creeping absence. And every day you showed up thinking, maybe today's different. Because that's what discipline told you to do. That's what consistency demanded. You mistook devotion for denial. But again, that's okay. That's how all transformations start. In silence, with confusion, and eventually, clarity. You stayed too long because you believed, not in luck, not in easy money. You believed in mastery. You believed in process. You believed that if you just refined enough, practiced enough, faced your emotions enough, that eventually the market would reward you. But what do you do when the market itself changes the rules? When the battlefield vanishes, when you can no longer out-process the problem because the game is gone? You grieve, and then you adapt. But that moment, that pivot, requires something very few people talk about in trading: letting go of the identity. That's what makes it so hard. It's not about the P&L. It's not about the charts. It's about the part of you that's tangled in the role. You were the guy who woke up before the bell, the girl who logged journal entries religiously, the person who sacrificed weekends to study setups while others partied. You made it your mission, your path, your language. And now, that language feels dead, and you're left mute. But here's what you're beginning to realize. The market may be dead, but the mission isn't. You didn't become a trader just to trade. You became a trader to pursue clarity under pressure. You became a trader to learn how to think with intention. You became a trader to build internal mastery. And guess what? That mission lives on. It can outgrow trading. It can evolve beyond charts. It can transform into something even deeper, even more aligned. But only if you let go of the corpse. Only if you bury the version of you that refused to evolve. There's power in saying, I stayed too long. Because it marks the turning point. It means you've stopped lying to yourself. It means you're ready to face the truth. It means you're ready to move. And what comes next? That's where your real edge lives. Not in the charts, not in a pattern, in your capacity to shift, to rewire, to grieve the dream, and build a new one rooted in reality, not illusion. And if that scares you, good, because it means you're awake now. It means you've stopped surviving and started feeling. You're not chasing clarity in the charts anymore. Section 5. The machines took your soul. Trade. You remember your favorite setup. Not because it always worked, God no, but because it felt right. It felt like you. It was the one setup you truly owned. Not some copy-paste from a PDF. Not a recycled YouTube strategy. It was yours, refined, personal. Dialed in after hundreds of failed entries, after thousands of candles studied in silence. It was the result of your sweat, your humility, your obsession. That was your soul trade. And then one day, in early 2025, it stopped working. At first, you thought it was the market. Maybe news interfered, maybe volatility spiked, maybe sentiment shifted. So you held back. You adapted. You waited. But the next time, same thing. The pattern appeared. You felt the setup unfold. You clicked buy, and it reversed. Violently. Immediately. You stared at your screen, stunned. What just happened? That wasn't a loss. That was surgical. That was targeted. And that's when it hit you. They took it. They took your soul trade. Not by stealing your setup, anyone could do that, but by replicating your behavior before you even acted. Because in 2025, trading became a psychological mirror, not a price discovery tool. The charts weren't responding to human supply and demand. They were responding to patterns of behavior. To you. To the way you reacted to risk. To the timing of your clicks. To how often you hesitated. To the probability that you'd FOMO after a 2-bar pullback. It wasn't trading anymore. It was profiling. And once they had enough of your data, your soul trade wasn't yours anymore. It was bait. Let that sink in. Your edge, the one thing you believed in, became the weapon used against you. And the worst part, it wasn't personal. It was automated. You weren't worth targeting. You were worth modeling. They didn't care about you. They cared about your behavioral predictability. And once they had that, you were done. No amount of backtesting could save you. No risk management technique could outsmart it, because it wasn't random. It was engineered. So what do you do when your soul trade dies? When your most trusted pattern becomes a trap? When the one thing that made you feel safe becomes the bait on the hook? You mourn it. And then you ask, Was it really the pattern that worked? Or was it the version of me that used to execute it? Because that version, they're gone too. Not dead, evolved. You're not the same person who first found that trade. You're more aware now. You see the layers, the manipulation, the systems stacked against you. And maybe, just maybe, that old version of you needed the soul trade to feel secure, to feel skillful, to feel worthy. But now you don't need proof. You need truth. And the truth is, your soul trade didn't fail. It fulfilled its purpose. It brought you here, to the edge, to the silence, to the death of what you once were, and the beginning of what comes next. So what does come next? That's the question you're afraid to ask. Because you've always measured growth in pips, in R, in compounding curves. You've always judged your progress by execution stats. But what if your evolution now has no chart? What if the progress you're about to make can't be measured in ticks? What if the next edge has nothing to do with trading at all? You feel it, don't you? That quiet hum, that pull inward. Not to quit, not to run, but to redefine. You're not done. You're becoming. And to become, you must let go. Not just of a strategy, but of your attachment to being right, to being the one who figured it out, to being a trader in the old world. That world is gone. But you. Section 6. The end of the fair game. You used to believe in the game. That's what kept you coming back, day after day, loss after loss. It was the belief that trading was fair. Not easy, not forgiving, but fair. If you followed the rules, if you learned the game, if you controlled your emotions, managed your risk, honored your process, then eventually you'd win. Not just a trade, but freedom. And for a while, that belief held you steady. It gave the pain meaning. It gave the uncertainty structure. It gave your discipline a target. But now, in 2025, you see it. You see the broken pieces of that belief scattered across your screen like shattered glass. The game isn't fair anymore. Because it's no longer a game. It's a simulation. You weren't prepared for this. No one was. The evolution didn't happen overnight. It crept in through the cracks. Machine learning here, high frequency there. Then the models got smarter. The bots got quieter. The volume got thinner. The fills got weirder. Then came the behavioral AI. The models that didn't just react to price. They reacted to you, to your timing, your habits, your mistakes. They knew when you'd buy, they knew when you'd panic, they knew exactly when you'd exit out of frustration, seconds before the reversal. They didn't read the market, they read you. And suddenly, you realized you weren't playing a fair game anymore. You weren't even playing the same game. You were trying to trade patterns. They were trading people. And your people, retail traders, had become prey. They weren't participants in the market. They were liquidity nodes, bait, energy to be consumed. And the worst part? The platforms, the brokers, the educators, the influencers, they all knew. Maybe not explicitly, maybe not in detail, but they knew enough to stay quiet. Because the illusion is profitable. The lie pays well. So here you are, 15 chapters later, 1,000 realizations deeper. You've walked through the ashes of a dream, the ruins of a market you once trusted. You've peeled back the layers, grief, denial, frustration, guilt, fear. You've watched the systems change, the volume vanish, the machines rise, the edge dissolve. And now? Now comes the real question. What still lives after the death? Because something does. You feel it. Trading in its 2025 form may be gone. The charts are no longer your sanctuary. The market no longer feels like a fair opponent. But you're still here, breathing, listening, aware. And that means something. That means everything. Because what trading gave you, what it really gave you, was never just financial. It gave you discipline. It taught you how to show up when you didn't feel like it. It gave you humility. You learned how to lose without blaming the world. It gave you awareness. You learned the hard way how your emotions move faster than price. It gave you spiritual pressure. You faced your ego, your greed, your need to prove. And now? Now you carry that with you. Not as a trader in the old world, but as a deeply aware version of yourself, forged in risk, refined by loss, reborn in truth. That can't be taken. That isn't dead. That's what survives. Maybe the dream has changed. Maybe the laptop lifestyle fantasy is gone. Maybe the freedom you once sought in the charts now calls to you from somewhere deeper, less visible, more real. And that's okay. You didn't fail. You graduated. You evolved past the surface-level game. You left behind the addiction, the illusion, the constant hunt for the next setup. You saw the strings behind the market. You saw the cage dressed as opportunity. And you chose to wake up. Most never do. You did. And now? You get to choose again. Maybe you stay in markets, but on new terms. Maybe you build a fund. Maybe you automate. Maybe you educate. Maybe you leave completely and apply everything you learn to something that truly lights you up. Whatever you choose, choose with eyes open, with identity released, with soul intact. The death of trading was not the end of your story. It was the death of your illusion. And what remains is the raw, untamable, unmanipulated you. Clear-eyed, emotionally sober, unattached, and finally, free.